learning environments that we need to create as part of the EYLF. Now, when you create your learning environments, they're the heart of your setting. They need to be welcoming, reflect your families, and respond to the interests, needs, and abilities that you have of the children in your care. And your learning environment needs to be vibrant, flexible, and cater for learning styles as well. So knowing your students actually is vital, and the learning profiles that you've created earlier will come in handy even when you create your learning environments, both indoor and outdoor. Your learning environment needs to invite communication. So it invites families to contribute. Families can contribute with their ideas, with their interests, and also their questions. And this is wonderful if you're wanting to develop an inquiry-based learning setting. You get children to respond to questions that they have. Give them to you so you can create spaces that are addressing their questions, things that they're wondering about. So communication is actually really important for your partnership with families. So your indoor and outdoor environments support all aspects of children's learning. So gone are the days where they can go out and play just in the sand pit and that's it for the day. We really have to be thinking about what we're offering children creatively, emotionally, for their physical and social development, their cognitive, even literacy and numeracy are areas that you can bring both into your indoor environment as well as your outdoor environment. So we're thinking of the whole child when we're creating spaces. Learning environments nowadays, when you're talking about the early years learning framework, they need to be innovative, changing, stimulating, responsive to students and children. They're answering questions that are presented. They're extending children and they're encouraging whole child development. Strengths and abilities and interests are catered for. So I want to give you just a little example of something that I've done. The children had a real interest in what they wanted to do when they grow up. And so we explored this. And when I do my planning, I like to really think about, right, what's happening indoor and what's happening outdoor with relation to the learning and the curriculum that's being presented. So here's a format that might help you. So you break up your planning into the different sections or zones that you have, indoors and outdoors, and you brainstorm your ideas. Now, these ideas might occur for 1, 2, 3 weeks. It just depends on how the children are responding. It's very important in your planning to be fluid. If something's not working, then it's very important to change it. But here's just an idea of how you can be innovative with your indoor play. So I broke it up into zones, blocks and construction, books, communication, that's developing literacy and numeracy, dramatic play, music and movement, which sometimes I feel the arts are slightly forgotten, particularly if you're not from a musical background. But I want to show you some ways that you can involve music in a really interesting and real way a little bit later on. But in your indoor play, you're always remembering sensory play, science. Science is wonderful because that draws in the questions that you're asking and being presented with. And it helps to stimulate conversation, hopefully at home, so that they can bring their questions back to you for during the week. You can write them down, and then in your future planning, you can address those questions that have been asked. Visual arts is important. Creativity, practical life is something that can be implemented into your play. Practical skills like, for example, I wanted the students through the postman play to be able to learn their address and their phone number. That's really important things that children can be learning. And you can include your practical life element into your play as an idea. You could have incursions with speakers, and I included my letter of the week because that's how I do my planning. But there's some great ideas. You might not do everything here, but it gives you a little format of how you can develop your play in your setting and start to get creative. So here I just had a few ideas, maybe some pictures just to show you. We had a weigh and wrap station just with some scales and some boxes and some bubble wrap. We had posting letters where they could post letters, and a little shop set up on the right hand side there that you can see where the kids could buy their supplies. Right. Other ideas, that we've had, playing teachers. They love that. So we set up a teacher's desk, indoor area for when we were doing doctors and hospitals. And these ideas don't have to be expensive. You can get the visual punch with the printables, which are what I've created there. And then you can just add in a few elements. So it doesn't have to take a lot of time, and it certainly doesn't have to take a lot of money. So once those resources are organized, you can just keep them as well for when the interests come up in future years. So in my class, I've got lots of different zones where the children can go and have fun. So there's a kitchen, there's a musical area, there's boxes, there's a collage table. I have got a whiteboard there, and think of your room in terms of zones of what is actually happening and what are they learning in each of the zones. Things need to be changing quite a bit, so it's also got to be very practical for how you work. So here's just a few ideas of what we've done. We had a little pet shop one week, which they absolutely loved, and didn't have to be inexpensive, but I collected tins for the children to play with. Pom-poms were our food, cellophane was more food. So things that you've got lying around that you can create into a space very quickly. One of my favorites was the first time I introduced a shop was our honey shop, and they absolutely loved this station. It was easy to do, it was quick, and the kids loved it. So there's some little ideas of how you can do it, but it's got to work for your setting. It's got to be cheap, and it's got to be practical for your indoor, because it's changing quite a bit. Now we're going to talk about the outdoor natural environment. So the outdoor natural environment, often you get what you're given, so to speak, and budget has a lot to do with what you can actually do. So you really need to think about planning your outdoor spaces. When we're looking at the early years learning framework, our natural environment needs to include plants, trees, edible gardens, sand, rocks, mud, water, and other elements from nature. That's one of the things that they talk about in the early years learning framework. Now, we don't necessarily have all of those elements in play, but we can create zones where those elements can be in play. So as we go along, you'll see a few more ideas of how you can do that. So our natural environment, right, it needs to have open-ended interactions. There needs to be an element of spontaneity, risk-taking, exploration, discovery, connection with nature, and ongoing environmental education. When we're thinking of our budgets, don't be afraid to create spaces that change outdoors, bringing out activities that help children to be more creative. If you don't have the benefit, and we don't where I am, of having a huge big playscape, playground, lots of money and all of that, well, we have to make the best of our situation and bring resources into our outdoor space that are going to give children the opportunity to play creatively, to have open-ended tasks, to involve risk-taking. So you do have to be quite imaginative. It needs to respond to the children. What are their interests, and how can you bring them outside? Thinking of your interactions between the outside and indoor activities as well. Is there a good flow? And how can you create a better flow from outdoor activities and indoor activities? So learning is happening in your outdoor space as well. So looking at the outdoor play, you can do a similar thing. You can, in your planning, have your zones of what you're wanting to teach, and then you can get brainstorming with your ideas. And I love the EYLF because it is so flexible. You can get the children's contributions, and you can get parents' contributions. So it doesn't have to be all your work, but if you set it up in your planning and you invite people to come in to give their suggestions, it really makes for a wonderful program for the children. And sometimes you might not have all the supplies that you need, but if you let parents know what is coming up and how they can contribute, then it's a wonderful experience for the children. So there's an outdoor plan of what you could do, and you can tie in your play with what's happening with your early learning setting. Now, talking about music, on this plan you can see music and movement. I have introduced such a wonderful thing in our play area. I play classical music whilst the children are playing, and this just adds such a beautiful element to the outdoors. I've also added scarves so the children can dance with the music, and I've added in clothes for dramatic play. So this provides such a great experience for the children as they listen to music when they play. It also creates a nice calming effect depending on the music, but usually I like music without words, and like Bach or Beethoven, Mozart, it's really beautiful. And if you're not musical, this is just a simple way that you can introduce music into what you do, both indoors and outdoors. So we'll just keep going. For smaller spaces, I'm not a great gardener, so this has been something I've really had to work on. So I've got little tubs that we can change the plants regularly, and it's great for smaller spaces. And those are just tubs that I got from the local Bunnings. They were about $9 or $10 at the time when I got them. Now, risk taking is really important. Now, here's an idea that I saw, and when you're thinking of your outdoor area, do you shy away from risk or do you encourage it? So here, materials can be selected that enhance and reflect what is in nature and familiar, to also introduce novelty and provoke interest and more complex and interestingly abstract thinking. Now, when we talk about risk taking, there is something that has to be thought of. So it has to be planned for, and you have to get proper safety guidelines in place before you even attempt anything like that. But there's an idea that is encouraging. So not only is risk-taking important, but you're thinking about ideas that encourage greater thinking and abstract thinking. So here, there are sculptures that you can see, but these sculptures have a dual purpose. They can encourage balancing as well. So I love that. Children can pretend to create and balance, and materials selected have a variety of uses. This is particularly important when you are developing your outdoor space, so that zones have multiple purposes. One thing we've done just easily is create an outdoor kitchen. Now, this was in winter, so we had to move our outdoor kitchen from the play area and put it under cover, and this was just a quick way that we did it. We put it on some shelving, and the great thing behind is we've got a whiteboard that the children can work on. They can write menus, they can write orders, and just to see those things happening through play, it's actually quite inspiring to see that you haven't just sat down and gone, now you're going to write a menu. The children naturally want to do it when the resources are set up beautifully. So the other thing to remember is donations are really powerful, because you might not have the resources to just go to the secondhand shop and buy everything. Involve parents and your community as much as possible. Now, one of the things that I also love are sensory trays. Now, these trays can be bought. They are quite expensive, but they are worth every single cent. They can go into your indoor area and they can go into your outdoor area. They can reflect the interests of the children at the time, and their versatility just make them excellent for outdoors. And also messy play. Messy play is very important for children to actually be doing. I like these trays because the mess is actually contained. And you can have them high so children can sit at them. They can be at a different level so they can stand. But you can also take the trays off and you can put them on the grass. So that's also a lot of fun. Now, back onto music, one of my passions. And I've already mentioned this, but you can also introduce classical, jazz, and other instrumental music that you like to create an atmosphere. Here are some ideas. So you can see in this little playground there are pipes and gongs scattered throughout the play area. I mean, that would be really easy to do. It would be quite cheap to do, but you've got to think of your space and you've got to plan for it if you're going to include it. So when you consider your outdoor space, your budget will have a lot to do with it. Have a plan and start to collect ideas. Look at plant choices and get a vision and consider the zones of play that cater to the whole child. I love to get inspired by local parks. So here's a local park, and It's just beautifully set out, probably by leading architectural designers, but you can take their ideas and create them in your little space for a fraction of the cost with a bit of planning. I love the way they use the tree trunks. Really beautiful. Okay. And bird baths. Now, selecting native plants will encourage bird and insect life. So this is something to consider when you select your plants. So the children can be responsible for the bird bath or a bird feeder, but it also attracts the insects and the birds. You can have this as part of your environmental education as well. That's just a beautiful bird bath that I saw. Paths for balancing, including that in your setting. Love those. Now, a community art project. Oh, this would be wonderful to do if you feel so inspired. Just absolutely great, and you've got the space to do it. Now, the other thing you can develop for outdoors is small world play. And this is something that I've started to develop in our play area. I've got about 6 tires, and each tire has a different theme of what we can do. We can't keep our play things out all the time. So I've got tubs that are located next to each tire, and each tub has a different play idea. So one, can be sand toys. One has got trucks and wood, so that children can play with the trucks and wood and make roads and that type of thing. Another one, babies and clothes and that type of thing. Another one actually has our kitchen things in it, so the children use the tire as a table. But that's one way that you can keep the play outside varied, by changing the tubs and the spaces where they go. You can develop your play that way. If you have to change your play regularly, which we do, and we can't actually keep our play outside, it all has to be packed away. So that's just an idea, but developing that's good. Now, I've got a Pinterest account. So if you wanted a few more ideas with your outdoor space, I've collected a few. So you just need to go to pinterest.com/starskills/outdoor play ideas. And I've started to collect some ideas because this is an area that I'm working on at the moment. And because our budget isn't huge, we just have to plan little things at a time and introduce ideas slowly. So, I hope you feel inspired to create some different zones that cater for the whole child.